Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Foundry Roundtable's Foundational Foundry tutorial series. In the following episode or episodes, we are going to finish up our mission build that we started in one of our previous episodes that we've been gradually adding to and getting done. So tonight we have some finishing touches to put on the mission itself, and then we are going to go through publishing your first mission and how to find it and all the stuff that goes along with that. So, Dragoon, you want to take it away and tell us where we're at?
Yes. So last time we had just finished building our interior of our crash starship. Had set it up so you save various crew members around, and then you finally save the captain, help him set up, detonate the computer core to prevent it from being stolen, and we are ready to kind of wrap this mission up. But I think the first question we gotta kind of address is how do we want to wrap this up? I mean, I figure some kind of finale is in order, like a final boss. You guys think?
Well, I like the idea of a boss fight.
Yeah, sounds good.
I know Duncan Ido here has crafted some pretty good boss fights, as well as some of the other authors here, so we should be able to give people some good pointers on that.
Well, let's see. For a thematic inspiration for why the boss fight is taking place, you could say that the enemy somehow knows that you have triggered the self-destruct and is attempting to shut down the self-destruct, and you need to stop them from shutting down the self-destruct.
So, I have something I was kind of thinking about, and so we have been saving all these crewmen, and we've been sending them to the beam out point just outside the ship with the pattern enhancers that we set up. So why don't we have the boss fight look there? Because I mean, these are Orions, and ultimately they're trying to take the crew. So maybe we have them return to the exterior and then do the fight there.
Sure, that sounds like a good idea.
Okay, which actually gets us to show another aspect of the Foundry, and that is map duplication. Five map, which is the surface of our planet, and fate map here. Got our copy. Obviously, it doesn't have any objectives right now because I haven't hooked it up to the storyline yet. But so first off, we can strip off the elements we don't need. Light rays. Getting a bit of feedback. Okay. Okay. Over here. Hopefully we'll spawn right at the entrance there that we created. the one tricky part with duplicating a map is you kind of got to undo all the work you did to kind of remove all the state transitions that we put in. Are we using them? All right, so got our Starfleet ensign that was originally out here, and we bring over all the seas. Have been saving. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and quick copy over each of the seas that we've saved thus far.
Duplicating maps is an easy way to, well, to put it bluntly, to duplicate a map. So you don't have to, go through the whole process of building it again if there's stuff on it that you want to keep. So for us, it's, kind of a simple plot device of going into this crash ship and then coming back out of it to the exact same spot. Now, we don't want to have to put the whole map down again and try and replicate where we put all of these objects. So if you duplicate the map,
it's doable. It's doable that way, but that's the hard way.
Yes, that's hard way.
Yeah.
And we like the easy way.
I mean, honestly, saving yourself 30 or minutes or an hour worth of work, just duplicating things, definitely worth doing it the quick way.
You do have to think about it a little bit in advance, just because when you have the idea that you're going to duplicate a map, you, of course, can't do any work on that map until you actually get to that point where the other map is finished in the process. So it can definitely affect the way you build, just because you will have that time where it's like, okay, I need to get this map completely finished before I can move on with other elements of the story.
And that's a place where outlining comes in very handy when you're thinking of the story that you want to do. If you create an outline and kind of work out where the whole story is going, you'll be able to determine that, okay, I need to go to this map twice. And so I need to finish it once. And then once that is all done and I'm pretty happy with it, then I duplicate it.
Yep.
All right, so I'm thinking about it, and
one warning. I was just going to throw out one last warning on map duplication. Sometimes if you have snap to grid on, the duplicated map, every asset on there will snap to grid.
Yeah, that's a good
I've had
one.
I've had that happen once. And it's like, I'm not going to be able to adjust everything. So,
now, as a
watch out
reminder,
for
the snap to grid button
The delete map, recopy.
Yeah.
The snap to grid button is up in the top right corner of the little map window in the center there.
I turn that off pretty much every time I enter the editor, just because it has limited usefulness. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll use it a lot to set up just sort of the basically a lot of rough details. So building out a floor that's continuous on a custom map, that's pretty easy to do with custom. Well, that's the easiest way to snap to grid is the easiest way to do that, because it's like put it down, next bit, done. But if you do anything that requires really fine detailing, you'll either be using coordinates or not snap to grid. But you'll have to turn snap to grid off to get the precise coordinates. Anyway.
Check the map real quick. Sure that nothing's amiss before I get too far into it.
As we've said in many previous episodes, you'll spend a lot of time testing your missions and testing your maps. So, if you find yourself going, move an object a little bit, test map, move an object a little bit, test map, that is entirely normal.
All right, so thinking to myself, my plan here is that I'm going to have some Orions standing over here. So this is the captain of the Orion ship that is beamed down to take on obstinate Starfleet officers. But I mean, it occurs to me that it would be kind of silly for these Starfleet officers here, these survivors, to just sit there. I mean, they are trained, so I want them to fight. Which means I need something other than NPC contacts. Which is okay, because I don't need to actually talk specifically to them. So I've got, what, 4 here? All right. I need a group that has 4 members in it. Reasonably strong.
I think for 4, we've got 2 choices, Captain 02 and Captain 03. Oh, maybe Captain 03.
All right.
Isn't one of the commander mobs a mob with 4 units that are like a
Commander mobs
commander?
generally are pretty populous. Lieutenants will vary between 5 and 6. Ensigns are always 5. I think for 4, you've got to go to a captain. I think Captain 01 is a 5 person group, and then I know Captain 02, I just put one of these down recently, is 4 person, and I think 03 is 4 person as well with higher ranking dudes, but it could also be 5 with higher ranking.
I think it'll be fine. I mean, we can use a captain group, and then the captain is far less likely to die on us. And then we'll just scale up the number of enemies accordingly to kind of a little bit challenging. All right, so log in here really quick before I mess with any of the thing in this group and see who's what rank, so they can assign our intrepid Captain Trumpy to the captain mob in the group. A lot easier to do before you start moving them all around. So, what do you guys look for in a good boss fight?
Let's see.
Well, difficulty is kind of a hard thing to do with the Foundry, especially because you never really know what a player's gear and skill level is when they're playing your mission. So one thing that I have seen a lot in boss fights that I like in the Foundry is multiple stages.
Okay.
So, you fight a guy once, everybody goes down, maybe he taunts you or something and says, look, I brought along a big powered armor suit or something like that, and then you fight him again. What I like in a good, when I come out of a fight in Star Trek Online and I think to myself, oh, that was a good fight. It's when it's forced me to use all of my abilities and my skill, but I haven't died. So that's kind of what I look for in a good fight.
One of the guys in the forum or the chat room said that he measures it by when he worries about whether he's going to die in the fight. Me personally, I mean, if it's over quickly, then it doesn't really feel like a boss fight. It's more like curb stomping henchmen.
Yeah, but I'm also the
which
challenge.
May be the reason why the captain level NPCs have like 10 times the HP that a player does.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, there's no substitute for actual skill, which NPCs don't have.
Yeah, AIs are called artificial idiots for a reason.
Pax has some good advice from the chat room. Says, don't multi-stack your boss mobs with other mobs, except maybe all ensign ones.
It's tricky in this case because I've
Now,
technically given the...
if you're doing triggered...
I've technically given the player some help in the form of a captain mob of their own, so I'm probably going to double up at least at some point.
Yeah, in that case you might want to, when there are friendlies present.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would point out is that if you're going to be doing a multi-wave fight, then you really don't know exactly where the player is going to be when the second wave spawns. It may be directly on top of them, or it may not, depending on where the player has moved to, and you can't really control that.
Well, there's some ways that you can try and put them in a particular spot, like have them go talk to a dialogue contact between the stages of the boss fight. So, like for our...
I just thought of...
Go ahead.
I just thought of a neat trick that is done at one place in the game, and I don't know that it's done anywhere else. On Nukara, one of the bosses actually spawns on top of a platform. You can climb up onto the platform, but it's generally a bad idea. That's because if you put the boss so they spawn where they're not stuck inside an object, but they're standing on an object that the player would have difficulty getting onto, you could just spawn them up on top of there, and then the boss will simply jump off to attack the player.
So I think for the purposes of our boss fight here, if we were going to do multiple stages, what I'd do is, you have the initial encounter, and then once that NPC mob is killed, you set it to spawn an NPC contact with the same costume as our boss. Have him, maybe on the ground in one of those animations that puts them lying down, and have that be a dialogue talk to contact, if this is possible. And so you go talk to them, and that spawns, he says, "Oh, you haven't defeated me yet." And then that spawns the next stage of the fight.
A short dialogue puzzle to trigger stage 2. Works, yeah.
But in that way, we do ensure that the player is exactly where we want them to be.
Which is where?
Right over the dialogue contact. If that was a...
And not directly on top of the spawn.
Yeah.
Okay, so for this multi-stage, but how do we differentiate the stages?
Well, I think what we would want to use is a different type of mob for the second stage.
Okay, so
and
maybe
reskin it as our dot. something that would be harder in the second stage, harder to defeat. And all of the different mobs have different powers and different, levels and that sort of thing. Require different levels of skill to defeat, I should say.
Couple of low-level groups to start it off.
Mm-hmm.
So I want them to start. I want them out there to start. That the player can see that the fight is brewing. So I'm going to use the invisible wall trick. Should explain what that actually is. So basically, we want to be able to control when the fight begins, so that you can basically put in some dialogue when the player comes out. Basically informing them of the situation. So it'll probably be the captain saying, "Well, we've got some trouble. There are incoming Orions. It doesn't look like they'll give up without a fight." And then, as soon as that dialogue is complete, we drop the invisible wall and the NPCs go in.
If that's a good way to make sure the fight starts exactly when you want it to start.
On the Y value just a bit to make sure they can't get under any train. I'm using the invisible tall walls, so they are like super high. Also, a thing to note is that this trick is not perfect. So I'm actually going to, in order to kind of help ensure that the NPCs don't inadvertently get through, I'm going to double wall, so that even if they attempted to pop through one wall, and NPCs can pop through walls, then it's kind of a getting anti-stuck trick that they can do. The second wall kind of helps keep them in.
You could also put down some more walls and completely envelop them in a box.
Oh, I intend to.
Yeah.
But yeah, it seems lately that they've been getting more persistent about popping through walls, and so I've been double walling lately to try and keep them contained. Okay, so I think this is a good point to switch over to story tab real quick, because I need to drop down objectives that I can trigger off of. Let's throw down map. And I'll go in here in a little bit, fill it out. But I know we are going to have pop-up dialogue. We're going to have them kill the first wave. Pop-up dialogue. Final group.
I think for that middle one, what you actually want is a talk to contact between the two groups.
Middle one, a talk to contact. Who am I talking to?
We'll put him down in a second. We want to talk to the boss.
Okay. Well.
So what you have is the first stage of the fight, and then After that, the boss is lying on the ground. You go over and talk to him. He says, "We're not done yet." And then you have the second stage.
All right.
That gives it just a slight bit more of a pause, I think, between the two stages.
Want to do a dialogue with contact, or do we want to do a invisible object and a interact with
I think
object?
we can do it. I think we can do a dialogue with contact for this one, because you can set NPCs that are the objective of a dialogue with contact. You can spawn them in when that objective starts, and spawn them out when that objective is complete. Correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is what we want in this case. But you'll need to go back to the map and put down that contact on the ground. And one of the things I'm sure we've mentioned this in previous episodes, but there are certain things that we have, the Foundry community and the MMO community have developed slang terms for. So when we say mobs, what that really means in this context is the NPC contacts, or the NPC contact groups that are the enemies that you fight.
Well, mobs aren't necessarily enemies. So some of them could be enemies. Well, some of them are always
lump in
enemies.
the friendlies for that too. So
some of them might be allies, and some of them are context specific, whether they're enemies or allies, depending on whether you're making a KDF or Federation mission.
I'm not sure where the term mobs came out of, but it's one that's been around in MMOs for quite a long time.
We actually debated this on an earlier episode.
Did we?
Yeah. We got
we make these episodes over many, many months, so.
Well, the origin of the term mob seems to be something rather old, so it probably came from some game back in like the 90s or something.
Which, of course, for gaming terms is ancient history.
Yeah. I mean, because I remember the Diablo and Diablo 2 games had a habit of placing enemies on the map in small groups. Because, you know, one enemy is usually pretty easy to just, wipe out.
Back when I was a hardcore World of Warcraft raider, we used to call anything that wasn't a boss, we would call them a trash mob. In a raid.
Well, there's also mini bosses somewhere in there, I guess. But yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the last time, and I have a bit of memory about this, is because I'm the one who gets to edit all these. We actually got schooled on the origin, and the origin is actually, it's short for mobile object, which is in really old games. It was basically a shorthand for any character, because a character was a mobile object.
Really the forerunner for NPC as a term.
Pretty much.
Interesting.
All right, we've got the basics down for the objectives for this fight, and I've started hooking up the invisible wall triggers to our invisible cage. We're at our time limit, so we'll have to pick this up next time, when we'll continue setting up our boss fight. So stay tuned. Until then, we will say good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.